And let me just thank you for joining. Today we're going to be doing updates, and with us is Mark Lauritsen from Capstone Practice, and Bart will be joining us soon. Like I said, I will record the call. Everybody is muted right now, but if you want us to unmute you, just raise your hand, and we'll stop frequently to see if people have questions or comments as we go along. So I hope everybody can see my screen. So these are the things.
You're not showing it yet, Claudia.
Oh, you're not. Okay, so thank you. Let me just make sure. Okay, show screen. Okay. Okay, so it's showing now.
There you go.
Okay, excellent.
Hi,
So,
it's Bart.
hi Bart.
I can't get into the screen sharing. I don't know what's going on, but I tried launching it a few times and just says it's launching and then nothing happens. So I'm calling in by phone.
Okay, I'm wondering if the
Okay.
audience is seeing it. Can people chat us and tell us that you're seeing the screen? Or raise your hand. Okay, people can.
Yep.
I'm getting
Yes.
some. Okay.
We're good. Except for
Okay.
Bart.
Okay. Well, Bart, when we get to the part that you guys are covering, I may be just giving you role as presenter, so hopefully that
Well,
will
no, I
work.
can't.
Or
I can't get into the meeting at all on the screen.
Yeah, I can handle that when that time comes, Bart. You can keep trying, I guess.
Yeah.
okay, okay. So starting off with training activities and conferences coming up, we are now accepting sign up for the live training in San Antonio, Texas. It's going to happen right before the LSCT conference and the Monday and Tuesday of that day. We have a beginning trainer, and then we're also really excited to hopefully offer a beyond the basics trainer, which is going to be for folks who have done a training before, may have done forms and want to come back for a refresher and focus on some of the frequently challenging topics. So it's still going to be very much a workshop style, and it's going to be the Tuesday of that week. So we are accepting registrations right now, and we're hoping to close the registrations in mid-November so that we can make all the plans and plan the curriculum and all that. So check it out and talk it up amongst your network in case they're sending folks to the TIC conference, or in case they can bring some of your developing staffs or yourselves. In November, we're going to be at the NLADA conference in New Orleans, and we're going to be doing a workshop on November 6th, where we're going to focus on innovations in domestic violence clinics and assistance projects. So if you're going to New Orleans, look out for the workshop, and uh, drop me an email if you want to connect with me or Liz Keith, who's going to be there with me on the floor at the conference. So just wanted to highlight that. We have a couple other exciting community calls that we've been prepping for a little while. On the 17th of November, we're going to take a pause um, and invite all of you, and if you want to invite other people in your community, about LHI functionality and enhancements in 2016. We're planning our, slate of tickets and enhancements that we want to push next year, and we have ourselves already collated through a bunch of ideas from prior years that we couldn't do because of lack of resources. And so we want to present some of those ideas now that we have more flexibility with the new platform, and get a sense of priorities from the community. Also, if people have ideas or suggestions that will make the LHI experience or functionality behind LHI better for the workflows that you're seeing developed in your local states, please feel free to come and join. We're hoping it's going to be more of a conversation, and that in the course of the call we'll be able to gather a sense of what would be priority if we're going to use our limited resources to do some nice enhancements in 2016, what would be beneficial for everybody that uses the platform or for a small group focusing really on a particular workflow. So that's on the 17th of November. And then on December 1st, we're going to do what we have always called the National Technical Webinar. And this is an hour to an hour and a half webinar where we go deep into technical issues. And we have done multiple presentations before, like on PDF. We have done hot docs and Microsoft Word, how they work together. We have done workshops on recycling other people's, like, content from the portal, how to do your due diligence if you're going to use somebody else's template, etc. So we are still open to receive suggestions. It could be one big topic or a series of topics that there's interest and need to repeat and record or update. So we have a survey, and I invite you all to share feedback through that so that we can pick and prepare for that. So that's going to be coming up on December 1st. The other piece of news is that we posted the LHI quarterly stats, and these are the aggregate statistics from January to September. And if you want to go in and see how your state is doing or how your forms are doing, that's the general link. All of the reports are there. Just some snapshots on what's going on in 2015. We're doing 1,304 documents per day. By accounts, anonymous users remains the most popular use of the system, with about 30% of all the assemblies being done by self-help centers that actually create accounts in LHI, and that 29% has increased from last year. Lawyer use, advocate and lawyer use is about 14% of all the LHI assemblies, with some of the states that are having really good success if you want to look for advocate-driven type interviews of projects. And they include Florida, North Dakota, New York, and California. If you want to connect more on those or you want to know more about that, feel free to reach out to me if you want to, get more examples on that. I bring this up because it's the Pro Bono Celebration Week. So in case you're thinking about pro bono projects and things that may be helpful to the communities you serve. The top 5 states remain pretty much the same. Minnesota has now cropped up as the state number 5. It used to be Texas last year at this time period, so that's the only change, but the order of the other 4 top states remains the same. And Mark and Bart, feel free to jump in here. I just wanted to review with folks what we did, some of the highlights on what we did on the last code push of the 20th, last Tuesday, actually, a week ago. We had an issue that we had been trying to fix for a while that was actually reported to us as a bug. And the issue was that the navigation buttons in LHI were not showing up in all the languages that we support. And we worked on it, I would say, probably since last December through now, and we finally were able to do it. So now everybody who is using the LHI suite will see the navigation buttons in other languages. So hopefully that will be helpful in terms of getting higher rates of assemblies on your forms. The other thing that we did is that we cleaned up the account deletion protocols on LHI, and now all users can delete their own accounts except for template providers, template developers. We did not enable that on template developers because we have to think through the workflow if they're active live interviews. If we allow deletion of the developer account, the users that come back to LHI won't be able to recycle. So that's a topic that we can talk about on the 17th, and we would welcome feedback on what would be a good way to allow for developer deletion and what type of messages or warnings we should pop up so that end users are not affected by that. Then we had this ticket that Mark, maybe you can explain it better
Sure.
than I
Yeah,
can.
I'm happy to talk about it because it's a pretty big one. And essentially, it's a matter of restoring some functionality that we had on old NHI that got lost when we started the rebuild. It has to do with which answers are saved when you exit a Hot Docs interview and press the Save button. And out of the box, Hot Docs Server only saves answers to variables that are referenced in the current interview. So if you have a scenario where you've got a, a person using two different interviews with the same answer file, and the second interview does not include or reference all the same variables as the first interview. When you save your answer set after running the second interview, any answers to such variables are lost. And this does not come up too often, but we've had a number of scenarios with workshops, etc., where there was an intentional sequence of interviews and answers were being lost inexplicably. The short bottom line is this has now been fixed. So now on LHI, whenever you have an answer set saved with one interview and you've got certain variables from that interview in the answer set, and then you go to any other interview and use that and answer questions and save, Hot Docs overlays the answers from the second onto the first. So all answers to pre-existing interviews are now saved. This was a big issue in at least one California court context where it's been established that this is a fix. If anybody else has run into anything like this, be aware that it should be fixed now, and there should not be any loss of answers in these scenarios. So we can, if there's any questions, we can come back to that later, but that's the basis of this so-called number 426. It's restoring functionality that was already working on the old server. So you can continue, Claudia, unless there's any questions behind the scenes, we can address them.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We hear you now.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So the other thing that we did is that we now are doing about monthly patches, just routine patching the server to make sure we are running on the latest and the greatest. And so we did a server patch on the 24th. On these, we're not pushing our own code. It's just a routine patch. And after we tested on that, we noticed that for Firefox users that were using old versions of that, they would be getting a screen when they click on the URL. If it's A2J facing, they would get a pretty kind of scary looking screen. There's not much we can do about that. It's something that actually happened while we were doing the server patch that's related to something that Firefox did to Adobe Flash. So if you're getting users telling you that they cannot upload the interview or they cannot open the interview, the recommendation is that they update their Adobe Flash software on that computer if they haven't already, because it's going to happen with any other Flash, not just LHI. It's kind of like a overall Firefox piece. So just wanted to flag that in case you hear about it. It's not something that we can change on LHI. It's just something that is coming from the browser. And then in December, we have one more code push for the end of the year. We are targeting December 15. One of the things that we're hoping to do is we're hoping to bring back the length of interview reports. And hopefully we'll have that capacity turned on for at least maybe the last 2 weeks of the quarter so that we can share a partial report in January on length of interview in case you're planning mobile interviews or other interviews that are shorter than what may be already being in use. The other thing is that the issue that we have been calling the try again or get document issue, that is still work in progress. We're hoping to hopefully be able to do something about that by the December code push. So that will make sure that users are not having problems assembling documents. So I'm excited about that. And then I just wanted to let you all know that we have received reports from multiple states, both on A to J and hot dog interview uploads and update issues. Generally, the behavior that has been described to us is that people are having to do the upload more than once, and they don't see it. They don't see the upload in LHI. So we have actually a couple set of tickets going on this. And so if others are seeing this behavior, please do send us a report because we're working on it. We're working on doing some extended login. And what I want to do is once we get that logging on LHI to trap additional errors is to invite everybody that reports the issue to test to see if we can get to what is leading to that upload experience. So I'm going to pause, and I don't know, Bart or Mark, if you want to flag any other technical issue, but I'm going to pause to see if anybody on the call has a question or wants to comment on anything. I see. Okay.
Looks like Alex Clark has got a question.
Okay.
Okay, but he's
Yeah,
trying
he
to
wants to
enable,
come
remember how
in.
to enable audio. Alex, you can also just put it in the chat if that's a problem, or put it in the question utility itself where you're typing.
Oh, somebody can unmute him.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, that's true. We have to unmute him. Okay. Alex, you're unmuted now.
Try again, Alex. Okay.
Anybody else wants to be unmuted?
I see Kathleen has raised a question, Claudia. What's the average completion rate?
Yeah.
Those numbers went by too fast.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't put the rate of assembly. The rate of assembly went up. It's gone up from last year, and I think we're now at around 56% rate of assembly. So yeah, there has been a slight increase. I think, rate of assembly is kind of a fuzzy number because it really depends on what's going on locally. But part of it is I think that there's fewer templates, so there's probably a higher rate of assembly per template. And then some states are adding additional workflows, supporting things with navigators or live help. So those states you'll see, some states are now like at 68%, um, and some states are at 80%. So
And Alex is asking about the uh, latency issue with A to J interviews, the problems Nebraska was having, which I understand a fix is in the works for that, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
live yet, right? It's still on staging.
yeah, if we have a fix, we're going to put it on rebuild QA and test it there before we push it to production.
And Alex, just to answer your question, apparently LHI is not using a content delivery network. Um, it's using the Microsoft Azure servers, and apparently they've gotten to the bottom of the latency problem. There's something in the code that was not replicating A to J interviews across servers when uploaded, in short. So as Bart said, I think that fix has been pushed to the staging server, and as soon as it's confirmed to be solving the problem, that will be pushed to production, and you guys will be among the first to know.
Okay. But if anybody else notice issues with uploads or updates, shoot us an email at lhi@probono.net with the details. That way, we can, if we are able to do the enhanced login, we can then invite you to try doing logins to see if we can get to the root of those problems, and we can hopefully nip those on the bud. And so we're aiming for December 15th. We generally freeze the code 2 weeks beforehand. So I would like to have a variety of templates to test with to make sure that that doesn't keep happening. Any other questions or on this part? Okay, so we'll turn it over. I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mark.
Okay,
Get to the training
sounds good.
part.
I'm going to do these. Sure. I'm going to do them start in reverse order, Bart, if that's okay with you.
Sure, yeah.
And let me just make me presenter. Okay, hang on 1 second. Okay, so you should be seeing my PowerPoint. Actually, it's Bart's PowerPoint that I dug out. This is something that we covered a couple years ago for multiple document assembly. This slide deck is actually available on the DA support site. I'm putting a link to it in the chat if anybody wants to grab it more easily. It's largely still accurate, and I'm going to use it as a way just to introduce this topic, review some issues around multiple document assembly, and demonstrate an example or two, because I think it's a great feature on WellHelp Interactive that is not yet widely used. So, and again, once again, if you have questions or comments, feel free to type them in. Claudia or Bart can check the question log and interrupt me. But essentially what happened 3 or 4 years ago was we introduced the ability to write templates on WellHelp Interactive that can actually result in more than one output document, more than one output file. It's always been possible to have multiple documents kind of concatenated into a single file by using insert statements in hot docs, Word templates, or PDF templates. Claudia, we're getting some background sound, so you may want to mute if that's you. But what happened several years ago was we enabled the ability to script hot docs templates such that they would generate multiple separate files. And that's done by using the so-called assemble function, a command in hot docs. And what's interesting is that you can generate multiple RTF outputs and or multiple PDF outputs mixed up in the same session. So a user has an interview, depending upon their answers. When they get done, rather than having a single document to download, they have a page with multiple documents referenced, each of which can be downloaded. So it's a pretty powerful concept. And let me just show you, I think I've got an example here of one running on LHI just to show you the end user experience. So this is a running template. It's several years old, but it still illustrates the idea. It's a consumer debt package application in New York. And if I run this, I won't answer many questions, but this is an interview that produces multiple output documents. And once I show you the runtime of it, I'll go back and show you the underlying scripts that make it happen. So we're being presented with a questionnaire. I'm just going to start with a fresh answer file. And I'll expand this window to make it look a little better on my laptop here. Get rid of the resource pane. Okay, so it's a pretty simple interview. It's designed for advocates who are helping consumers who are facing debt collection litigation. And so you've got your general information about the client. I'm going to leave this blank, but in this case, there are 4 possible documents that might be generated alone or in combination. And this particular application actually enables the user to say, hey, give me these all as one file or give them to me as separate files. So for multiple document assembly purposes, I'm going to generate 2 at least. So we'll pay no attention to the fact that there's all kinds of data normally you would have to answer. But let's just imagine we want to get a demand for documents letter and a debt verification letter, possibly multiple ones. And I'm choosing to generate each document as a separate Word file. So when I finish, I'm taken to the usual disposition page on Well Help Interactive. Once it's processed my my answers against this template. And when so far everything looks normal, right? So if I go get my document, actually in this case, it's more than one document. And as many documents as the template has been scripted to produce will be revealed on this next screen. In this case, a debt verification letter and a demand letter. So this can be any number of documents, any mixture of RTF, DocX, or PDF output documents. And from this point, I can download these as separate files and dispose of them, print them, do whatever I want locally with them. So in short, that's the typical kind of experience. You've got a template that's enabled for multiple document assembly. Depending upon the answers, the HotDocs script renders more than one assemble command, and then the result on Well Help Interactive is you get multiple output documents to deal with. How does that happen behind the scenes? So here is the template in question. If I look at the component manager, one way in which this is done, and the way it's done in this particular example, is right in the interview script. So this is the interview computation that controls the questionnaire, the interview. And at the end of this, you'll notice there is a set of scripts that contain these assemble statements. So depending upon which the user chose on that select documents dialog, we are going to be issuing one or more of these assemble statements. And this basically is the syntax, just the word assemble in caps like any other HotDocs expression. And then in pair of double quotes, the template that you're asking HotDocs to assemble with this command line parameter, /NW, which stands for no window, essentially saying, go ahead and assemble this document. Don't ask me a separate interview for it. Just generate it and produce it out for the user. Now, let's go back to the PowerPoint for a second, because there are a couple tricks and tips around this that one needs to be aware of. So first of all, because multiple assemblies are possible with HotDocs, not only HotDocs interviews, but A to J interviews that have a corresponding HotDocs template can produce this experience. And they all, though, rely upon HotDocs itself to do the producing through the assemble command. And as you saw in my example, that assemble can be unconditional, just always happening as a consequence of the user finishing an interview, or the various assemble statements can be conditioned upon various answers the user has given to questions in the interview. So you can use logic to control which templates to assemble under which conditions. The way you do it again is you can use the assemble statement in an interview like I just showed you, or when you're dealing with A to J where there's no HotDocs interview in play, you can put the assemble statement right in the HotDocs template. So there the process is conditionally or unconditionally inside your HotDocs template, you use the assemble statement. You always need a NW expression for this to work properly. One trick to be aware of is while you're testing this stuff on your desktop, you at least temporarily have to put in another parameter, this /STW, which stands for send to word processor. And that will then allow you to test your template in your desktop, generate documents to satisfy yourself that the assembles are working. But at least as of 2012, and I think it may still be the case, you should not leave that STW in when you upload it to the server, because the server complained. If anybody on this call happens to know whether that has changed, feel free to speak up or raise your hand or something. Let's see, and I'm kind of skipping through this because we're just really reiterating some earlier know-how about how to do this, and if you're curious, I recommend you run these slides and raise questions on the list. Again, if you got a pure HotDocs template, you can use the interview computation to launch 0 to n number of assemblies. One thing to be aware of is Presently on LHI, if you try to run a multiple document assembly template, and because of the answers to questions, nothing is being assembled, that's going to cause an error on the server. So the recommended practice is right now that any templates at least assemble something always to avoid that possible surprise for an end user. I showed you a RTF template. You can also do assemble statements in connection with HP, with PDF templates. But there, again, at least as of recent history, you couldn't put a direct assemble statement in a control field in the PDF template. And if anybody in the call knows differently, please let us know. But be aware that's one constraint. So if you've got a set of PDF templates, you need to use the assemble statement in the interview computation or in any RTF template that's part of the process. And Bart, you should also feel free to jump in if I am misstating or omitting anything important. One other twist you saw when I just did that assembly from this right here, you'll see the very names of the assembled documents are named after the title of the template. So you control the name of the file the user sees by the title, which is an attribute inside the component file for the template. And if you have, go ahead, Bart.
Question mark, are those actually the titles of your templates, or are those just the template names?
Good question. I'm not sure I even know.
Yeah.
So like at that, yeah, if you look at the component, I haven't touched this for a while.
Oh.
Yeah, in this case,
Yeah.
I think, Bart, they're using the template names themselves.
Right, which arguably is something that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
That's new on new LHI.
Okay.
It's
We may revisit this whole question and do an updated set of these slides as part of our December call, by the way, but I just wanted to remind people that this basic functionality does work. Let's see. From an upload point of view, this also has changed a bit since 2012. As you know, under present LHI, you no longer use the wizard inside of developer. You right-click on a template's name in your library and upload from there. And I believe automatically, Bart, that includes any insert and assemble instructions.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't need to. This is kind of irrelevant these days. I showed you an example. One other twist, just to touch on quickly, because we want to just move on to another topic, is if you're dealing with repeats, you can actually script assemblies. Say you've got 3 children, and for some reason you need a document for each child. You can script the assembly of multiple documents inside of a repeat. But as Bart put in slides here, there is a trick to that. You need to remind HotDocs which iteration it's on. And there is an advanced tutorial on the hotdocs.com site that actually covers this very topic. And I don't think that has changed. That's still something to be aware of. So if you're doing an assembly process in a repeat and you keep getting the same person's information on each iteration, you haven't addressed this particular issue, and there is a solution to it. We can take a moment if anybody has any specific questions on multiple document assembly, and otherwise we're going to move on to another topic. So I'll just pause for a second and talk about the reducing file size topic on the agenda.
Okay.
I'll make you presenter.
Okay. And I'll show my screen. When you do an upload of a template to the server, HotDocs Desktop creates a bunch of files in addition to the component files and the main template files, the HPT, RTF, and docx files. It actually creates some files that are actually not needed on the server, but that's something that's kind of cooked into HotDocs Developer right now. But it also creates some files that are needed on the server, which are the manifest files. And you can end up with a pretty huge package. It puts everything into a package, or you can end up with a pretty huge package to upload. And sometimes we've had some folks who have a slow connection or some issues with connectivity and have had trouble uploading that large package. And if you have a set of templates where you are using assemble or insert, and they're all packaged together essentially, and there's one main template that is inserting others or assembling others, you can end up unnecessarily with some very large manifest files. And the reason for that, I'm just going to open this template for editing. This is a good example because it's got dozens of inserted templates. And you can see all the control fields here with the inserts. If I take one of these, let's say I take this DV100 here, go to the field properties and go edit the template. If I open this up, one of the things that I see if I look at the component file properties is that it's pointed, this particular template, as with all of the other inserted templates, very sensibly have their component files pointed to the master template into which they're inserted. Now, if I go to the interview tab, I see that, first of all, that it's using a custom interview, and that is the computation interview. And if I open that up to take a look at it, it's a fairly humongous interview. And that is, the reason it's so big is, and so complicated is, that it needs to accommodate basically all of the scenarios that the master template handles and all of the possible inserts. But these individual templates in this instance are never assembled separately, or never don't need to have their own separate interview. The other thing you'll notice is that it has the use interview properties stored in the shared component file. So you can basically get rid of the custom interview in each of the inserted templates, and you can drastically shrink the size of the upload. And if I go, you can see, actually let me go out to, I'm going to go to template for this template, and you can see if I go down here, all of the manifest files that get created. You can actually create these, make HotDocs create them by doing a test in browser interview, and you'll see that it's creating these good-sized manifest files which have an XML extension, and they're all 121 KB if you notice. And the reason for that is that they're all using that interview, and when HotDocs generates the manifest files, it thinks that it needs to generate an interview basically for every single one, and includes all of the variables that are used in the interview in the manifest file, whereas really the manifest file for the main template needs to include them all, but the individual templates don't need to include them. Let's see if I can find the DV100. So here's the DV100, 123 KB. So if I go back to my component manager for the inserted template, first of all, I can uncheck, and this is important, you want to uncheck use interview properties stored in shared component file. If you don't do that, you end up changing the interview for the master template. So I'm going to uncheck that first of all. Once I've done that, then I can uncheck use custom interview, and I can check generate default interview. This assumes, I mean, if you have to test the template, you might want to use the custom interview if you want to test it individually. But once you're ready to upload it and you're satisfied that it's working properly, you can do this, you can make this change, or if you don't need to test it individually, you could make the change immediately when you create the template. So uncheck use interview properties stored in shared component file, uncheck use custom interview, and check generate default interview, and you're done with this process. Close the component manager, and I'll go back to, I'll do a test in browser on this one, and all I need to do is launch the interview, which is going to take a couple of seconds. Now there's a whole bunch of inserted templates in this template, and basically you're going to have to, in order to address the issue for this template, you'd have to visit each and every one of those inserted templates, open its component file, and make the changes that I just showed you. This is taking a little bit longer to come up, but let me go see if it's in the process of, it may have already generated that DV100 manifest file. DV100, so it's jumping around. So you'll notice actually it's jumping around, but you'll notice that shrunk down to 38 KB.
Yeah.
So it's considerably smaller. And if you do this for each of the inserted templates, you're going to, in this instance, you're going to get a much smaller package. It's probably not worth doing if you only have a couple of inserted templates, but if you have dozens and dozens like this one, it's definitely going to create you a much smaller package for the upload. So that's the technique, and if anybody has questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Bart.
Okay.
And let's see here, where am I? Okay. So the last thing, at least on my agenda, is to talk about local variables and parameters. These are things we've covered before in prior calls. Most of you on this call, I think, are somewhat more veterans of LHI, so this is not new to you. But this has to do with the ability in HotDocs 11 now to use these new features. And I just want to point out a few things about it, show you a quick example, a couple quick examples, and then open it up for any questions on this. Again, more just to get you thinking about this possibility and how it might make your life easier as you develop templates. So I've got a template here. Let me just show you how this thing looks. This is kind of a fun project I did last spring called Script Builder. It happens to use the parameters in kind of a creative way. This is not a typical MHI template that's generating documents for self-helpers or lawyers or legal professionals. It's really a tool for people like us, a tool for tool makers, as I say. And this just has a few examples in it, but the idea was you might have a need to generate a set of scripts for a particular context where you want to say if the state is California, do one thing; if it's New York, do another thing; if it's Massachusetts, do another. And rather than having to hand create all that, this was designed to let you do something like, let's say we have a variable called state MC. We want to replace it with set address TE to something for each given state, and let's say you have a few states here, and you could paste in a list of such things, etc. I'm not going to bother worry about spelling. You got a state of euphoria. And so the basic notion is, give me a script that has a branch for each of these items in this list. And what happens is, voila, I just move over to my next field, and it builds this script for me. It builds the stub of a script. It builds sort of a starting place. I can then cut and paste this into my HotDocs component and save myself a few minutes of time, especially if this was a list of all 50 states. So this may or may not be useful to you, but I want to show you how this uses parameters to accomplish this function. And basically what I'm doing is, behind the scenes, I have a computation that takes this as a parameter and transforms it into this, where this can be anything anybody wants to type. So that the whole notion of a parameter is that you can parameterize computations now and let your computations accept case-specific answers or variables as part of their behavior. So this happens to be the dialog. Again, this is going fast, and I'll skip a lot of the other things going on. But here, there is a computation. Let me find the right one. Called ifs for each item CO. This is a parameterized computation, and there's a couple things going on. You'll notice, by the way, in HotDocs 11, if you haven't already used this, there's a new tab called the Locals tab. And that's where you define parameters and or local variables for a computation. And once a computation has got something in that tab, it gets an asterisk on it so you can tell. So for instance, this computation is doing something else. There's nothing in the local tab. There's no asterisk. But the one I was just on has a local parameter. And the behavior is it's expecting to be given some entry text. And it shows up in this dark blue language here. And it's taking whatever the entry text I've given to it, processing it, and it's running a replace, and that's what's generating that result you just saw. So I've defined a parameter called entry text of type text. It can be any of these 4 types. And now this guy is being used. Let's see here. This should be being used in another computation. And when you use a computation that's got parameters, the other difference is HotDocs expects a parenthetical after it with the parameter. Okay, so what this is in that dialogue I showed you, this is what actually does the magic of transforming what the user entered in that left text field into what's produced in the right by setting it to this computation with whatever the entry text was given by the user. So long story short, this is a way in HotDocs to essentially create custom expression models. HotDocs has got a lot of built-in functions for calculating dates, for concatenating values, for noticing whether something gets answered and putting in nothing or its value depending upon that. But often in your work, you'll find you need to do something where you don't want to have to do it 20 times. You want to calculate whether somebody's a minor or an adult, and you've got 20 different people that you may need to deal with in a particular scenario. You can build a single computation that does that calculation and just pass through the variable for the given person's birth date and automatically do that. So this will require a deeper dive, I think, at some point, but I wanted to just show you the basics of it in a live example. And I'll show you one more just to show you how crazy this can get. So let me cancel out of this particular template. I'm not going to save my answers. Let's just get entirely out of this guy and show you. This is a non-legal aid example, but it's a corporate system. And I'm going to open its component manager. And I believe there's a granddaddy of a parameterized and local variabilized computation here. So this can show you what you can do that gets a little fancier. Here we've got 6 local variables. These are things that you're just storing locally as part of your script. Prior to HotDocs 11, as all of us know, if you wanted to do some scripting and temporarily set some variable and play with it as part of your script, you had to create a true full-fledged variable like temp1 or text temp or something and use that where you needed it. Local variables are designed to replace that. So these guys, these 6 here, only exist inside this particular computation. They can do whatever work you need to do. The answers to them only exist. There's no danger of them interfering with each other in some other computations or elsewhere in your template. Very powerful, very useful, very familiar to true programmers, and now available inside of HotDocs. Secondarily, this one has 2 parameters. So this expects, when it's invoked, to be given 2 different numbers, and then whichever those numbers are, it's going to go through this quite complex scripting and set various local variables in different ways and calculate things and process it for the particular 2 numbers it's been given. So it's a way of encapsulating some complex logic in one script and then using it across all different kinds of contexts. Let me stop there because I think I probably lost a lot of people, but I wanted to show you the power. In our world, by the way, I think a good starting place is to look at the HotDocs help. There's a pair of help entries for local variables and for parameters, and you can get to it, by pressing F1 when you're at the locals tab, among other ways. And if you want to read about local variables, there's a very comprehensive discussion in the help about how they're used, why you might use them, how local variables differ from regular variables, um, and how they can be named, etc. Again, you can have the same name for a local variable in two different scripts, and HotDocs doesn't care. They only have to be unique within the script where it's defined. And then on the parameters side, which I think is extremely powerful, and I'm trying to use it more and more myself in actual practice to save time and to have a more elegant application. There's a lengthy help entry on parameters, explains what it is. It's kind of like they say here, it's kind of like a local variable for a computation, but you can actually pass parameters, pass variables right into your computation and achieve the kind of things I was describing. They show you a couple examples. You know, if you want to say, what's the next Monday after some date, and you've got a number of different dates that you may need to manage in your interview, you can have a single computation, say called next Monday. It's got a parameter origin date, which is just whatever date you want to pass it. And then whatever date is given to it, it'll calculate the Monday following. So long story short, I recommend if you haven't yet spent time doing parameters or local variables, you'll almost certainly find it will save you time and effort in your templates going forward. It's only available in HotDocs 11, and I encourage you to spend some time getting familiar with it, and we can continue that discussion on a future call or on the doc assembly list. So Claudia, I think I've used up our time.